You think you chose your leaders. You think your vote, your protests, and your political beliefs shaped the world you live in today. But what if the most powerful forces dictating global politics aren't presidents, parliaments, or even the people? What if the reality of global power is dictated by invisible lines drawn thousands of years ago, and unwritten rules that every successful ruler in history has secretly followed? The truth is, the political theater you watch every day on the news is just the surface. Beneath it lies a brutal, calculating machinery of geography, human nature, and survival. Today, we are going to tear down the illusion of choice. We are going to look at the terrifyingly logical reasons why the world is the way it is, why empires rise and inevitably collapse, and the secret handbook that every leader, whether a democratic president or a ruthless dictator, must follow to stay in power. But before we expose the hidden architecture of global politics, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because understanding this will permanently change how you view every headline, every war, and every election from this day forward. Let us start by erasing everything you know about modern countries. Imagine a world with no borders, no police, no laws, and no overarching authority. This is what political philosophers call the state of nature. In the 17th century, a man named Thomas Hobbes looked at this concept and came to a chilling conclusion. He argued that without a central authority to keep us in awe, human existence is a war of every man against every man. In this state, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. To escape this perpetual nightmare of violence and theft, human beings made the ultimate sacrifice. We gave up our absolute freedom. We agreed to surrender our right to do whatever we want, and in exchange, we created a monster. Hobbes called this monster the Leviathan. The Leviathan is the state. It is the government. We handed over our weapons, our autonomy, and our unquestionable freedom to this massive, abstract entity, trusting that it would use its overwhelming power to protect us from each other. Decades later, another philosopher, John Locke, softened this terrifying image. Locke argued that we didn't just surrender to a monster, we signed a contract, a social contract. We agreed to obey the laws and pay taxes, and in return, the state agreed to protect our life, liberty, and property. If the state breaks that contract, the people have the right to overthrow it. This singular idea became the bedrock of modern democracy. It fueled the American Revolution and the French Revolution. But strip away the philosophical elegance, and the core reality remains exactly the same as Hobbes envisioned. The modern state is defined by one fundamental characteristic, articulated perfectly by sociologist Max Weber. The state is the only entity that holds a monopoly on the legitimate use of physical force. Think about that. If you lock someone in a room, it is kidnapping. If the state does it, it is imprisonment. If you take someone's money by force, it is theft. If the state does it, it is taxation. If you kill someone, it is murder. If the state does it during a war, it is heroism. The entire fabric of global politics is built on this monopoly of violence. But if every state holds this power, why are some states wealthy democracies while others are impoverished dictatorships? Why do some nations conquer the world while others are perpetually conquered? For centuries, historians blamed culture, religion, or the genius of individual leaders. But the truth is far more deterministic and, frankly, completely unfair. It all comes down to dirt, water, and mountains. Geography is the silent dictator of human history. Let us look closely at the United States of America. We often attribute American superpower status to its constitution, its economic system, or its spirit of innovation. While those matter, they are secondary to a massive geographical lottery win. The United States possesses the greatest internal waterway system on the planet, the Mississippi River Network. This massive system of navigable rivers flows right through the largest expanse of contiguous, fertile agricultural land in the world. Before trains or highways existed, transporting goods by water was infinitely cheaper than by land. This meant the US could easily feed itself, trade internally, and generate massive wealth with minimal effort. Furthermore, the US is geographically isolated from other major world powers. It is bordered by oceans to the east and west, and weak or friendly neighbors to the north and south. This isolation allowed the US to develop its economy and military without the constant threat of catastrophic invasion that ravaged Europe for centuries. When you have secure borders and boundless resources, you can afford the luxury of democracy. You can afford to debate, to vote, and to have a decentralized government. Now, turn the globe and look at Russia. Russia is the largest country on Earth, yet it has been defined for centuries by geographic insecurity. Its core population and political center are located on the northern European plain, a massive, flat stretch of land that funnels directly into the heart of Russia like a highway for invading armies. Napoleon used it. Hitler used it. Russia has no natural barriers, no towering mountain ranges, no protective oceans shielding its western flank. To survive, the Russian state historically adopted a strategy of aggressive expansion. It pushed its borders outward to create a buffer zone, absorbing neighboring territories to ensure that when the next invasion came, it would happen far away from Moscow. This constant state of geographical vulnerability requires a heavily centralized, militaristic, and often authoritarian government. When your nation's existence is perpetually threatened by geography, the luxury of decentralized democracy is often sacrificed for the brutal necessity of state security and rapid military mobilization. Or consider Egypt. For thousands of years, Egyptian civilization has clung to the banks of the Nile River, surrounded by impenetrable deserts. Because survival depended entirely on the complex management of the Nile's floodwaters, it required a massive, centralized bureaucracy to coordinate irrigation. You could not have individual farmers doing whatever they wanted. You needed a pharaoh, a god-king, to oversee the survival of millions. Geography birthed the absolute monarchy. If geography is the stage, then the rulers are the actors, but they don't perform for applause. They perform for survival. Whether it's a Roman emperor or a Silicon Valley CEO, the script remains the same. The actors on this stage, the rulers, must still figure out how to survive. And there is a hidden logic to survival, a set of unwritten rules that applies just as much to the CEO of a modern tech company as it does to a Roman emperor. In the 16th century, Niccolo Machiavelli dared to write down these rules. He stripped away the moralizing and the religious justification of power and looked at how leaders actually behave. He realized that a ruler's primary goal is not justice, not peace and not the welfare of the people. A ruler's primary goal is to stay in power. To do this, Machiavelli argued, a leader must be both a lion and a fox. They must be strong enough to frighten off wolves and cunning enough to recognize traps. They must learn how not to be good and to use or not use goodness according to necessity. Modern political science has refined Machiavelli's brutal honesty into a concept known as the Selectorate Theory, famously popularized as the Dictator's Handbook. This theory reveals that no leader rules alone. Not the most absolute monarch, not the most tyrannical dictator. Every leader needs supporters to collect taxes, enforce laws, and run the military. The group of people who have an actual say in choosing the leader is the Selectorate, but the subgroup whose support is absolutely essential for the leader to stay in power is called the winning coalition. The essential keys to power. The rules are frighteningly simple. Rule number 1. Keep your winning coalition as small as possible. If you only need the support of a few generals and wealthy oligarchs to stay in power, you only have to keep a few people happy. Rule number 2. Control the flow of money. Tax the masses as much as you can without sparking a total rebellion. Rule number 3. Reward your essential supporters. Use the money you extracted from the masses to pay off your generals and oligarchs. If you pay them well, they will protect you from the angry public. If you don't pay them, they will replace you with someone who will. This is why dictators in resource-rich countries often destroy their own economies and oppress their people. If a dictator's wealth comes from oil or diamonds pumped out of the ground by foreign corporations, they don't need a healthy, educated, or prosperous population. The people are irrelevant to the production of wealth. The dictator only needs to pay the military to guard the oil wells. Funding schools or hospitals is a waste of money that could be used to bribe a general. In fact, an educated and wealthy population is a threat to a dictator because they might demand political rights. Therefore, keeping the people poor and uneducated is not a mistake. It is a calculated political strategy for survival. But what about democracies? Why do leaders in democracies build roads, fund schools, and provide healthcare? Are they just morally superior? The Selectorate Theory says no. In a true democracy, the winning coalition is massive. A president needs millions of voters to stay in power. You cannot possibly bribe millions of people with direct cash handouts. There isn't enough money. The only way to reward a massive coalition is to provide public goods, infrastructure, national security, education, and a strong economy. In a democracy, doing good is simply a survival tactic. A leader doesn't build a school out of the kindness of their heart. They build it because, in a massive coalition, you can't bribe millions of people, you have to buy them with public goods. This dynamic perfectly explains one of the most misunderstood phenomena in global politics: foreign aid. We look at billions of dollars poured into impoverished, autocratic nations and wonder why the people never seem to escape poverty. But from the perspective of the Dictator's Handbook, foreign aid isn't meant to help the people. It is just another revenue stream to pay off the winning coalition. When a dictator receives international relief funds, they don't build hospitals. They buy the loyalty of their generals, ensuring the military keeps the starving population in check. The foreign powers providing the aid know this perfectly well. They aren't paying for humanitarian relief. They are buying policy concessions, military bases, or favorable trade agreements from the dictator. It is a transactional purchase of geopolitical influence, dressed up as charity. Similarly, autocrats love to borrow massive amounts of money from global superpowers. The dictator gets to spend the borrowed billions today to secure their immediate power, while the crushing burden of paying back that national debt is violently forced onto the citizens for generations to come. The citizens are, tragically, funding their own oppression. This brings us to a terrifying realization. The political pendulum swings, not based on moral awakenings, but on structural shifts in power and economics. When wealth is generated by massive, centralized industries, or when military power requires mass conscription of ordinary citizens, the state must grant rights to the masses to keep them cooperative. You cannot fight a total war with millions of unhappy, oppressed peasants. But when wealth is generated by a small elite, or when military power shifts from massive armies to automated drones and highly specialized mercenaries, the leverage of the ordinary citizen evaporates. And this leads us to the greatest disruption in the history of human governance, a disruption that is happening right now, completely reshaping the ancient rules of geography and power. For centuries, the ultimate currency of the state was physical control. The control of land, the control of trade routes, the control of physical bodies. But we have entered the digital age. Today, the most valuable resource on Earth is no longer oil or gold. It is data, it is information, it is human attention. The traditional state, defined by physical borders and a monopoly on physical violence, is suddenly finding itself incredibly vulnerable. We are seeing the rise of entities that hold power rivaling that of nation-states, yet they possess no armies and control no physical territory. Megacorporations and tech platforms now dictate the flow of information, shape public discourse, and even influence the outcomes of national elections. They have their own foreign policies. They have their own digital borders. If the fundamental basis of John Locke's social contract was that we surrender our freedom to the state in exchange for protection, what happens when the state can no longer protect us? What happens when the threats are no longer invading armies, but cyber attacks that wipe out power grids, algorithmic manipulations that tear apart social cohesion, and artificial intelligence that threatens to automate away the economic leverage of the working class? Are we witnessing the slow death of the traditional nation-state? As power migrates from geographic capitals into the cloud, the new oligarchs will not be generals with tanks, but engineers with algorithms. The monopoly on physical violence is being replaced by the monopoly on digital reality. The governments of tomorrow might not be elected bodies in marble buildings, but decentralized networks, corporate monopolies, or autonomous AI systems managing human affairs with cold, calculating efficiency. We are standing at the edge of a new state of nature, a digital wilderness where the old rules of Machiavelli and Hobbes are being rewritten in code. The political systems we take for granted, democracy, the republic, the nation-state, are not permanent fixtures of human existence. They are temporary solutions to historical problems. They are adaptations to the environment. And right now, the environment is changing faster than at any point in human history. The illusion is fading. The invisible lines of geography are being bypassed by fiber optic cables. The social contract is being renegotiated by terms and conditions you blindly accept. The question is no longer who you vote for, The question is whether the system you are voting in still holds the real power. You must look past the theater. Look at where the money flows. Look at who controls the vital resources. Look at the size of the winning coalition. Only then will you understand the true nature of the world. Power never disappears. It only shapeshifts. It adapts. It evolves. And it always seeks to protect itself. If you want to survive in this new world, you cannot afford to be ignorant of how the machinery works. Thank you for joining this deep dive into the hidden architecture of global politics. If this video changed the way you see the world, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below telling me which geopolitical theory or historical event you want me to dissect next. The world is complex, but together we can decode it. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and I will see you in the next one.